Hey everybody, this is Al with El Rey Collection, and I'm here with Scott, one of the OG vintage soccer collectors. So we will be, doing our premium today here, um, and it's slightly disorganized because Bill usually puts this together. But for those of you who don't know, since I'm not using his channel, um, what we do is we get together every week, Bill and I, and answer some questions. This week's Bill's out. So Scott has been gracious and has decided to sit in for him. And we
Happy to
usually,
happy to add to the disorganization.
there you go. And he's wearing his Angels jersey,
Yeah.
to support my favorite team, which is always, I think they're in last place again right now, but don't get me started on the Angels. But we will, we got a bunch of questions. How this works is we get questions from the community, the premium community, and we just walk through them. You can also join the chat, and you can ask additional questions or follow up. But we just put these things on, and then we get to it. So without well, Scott, actually, maybe not everybody knows you who's watching, so maybe I'll give you a second, kind of introduce yourself, tell people how you collect, and what you like.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. So, like you, I'm an old baseball collector. Proud owner of the first Beckett guide that came out in 1978, and stepped away from the hobby right after the wax bust of 1992. Started my family, went back to school, started my career, and got into soccer when my son started playing on the soccer field. As a young kid. And sitting out in the hot blazing sun many afternoons, having the benefit of having a phone next to me, I just by chance started googling the idea of vintage soccer cards. And from there I just came up with the idea that these things that were seemingly being sold so cheaply on eBay from sellers usually from overseas, that it might be an opportunity. So I started to read up on it. I got interested in the history, and I've been a vintage soccer card collector for probably 14 or 15 years now.
Yeah, the other day I was thinking, yeah, it kind of started like 2009, so that would be basically 15 years as well. I
Right.
think we battled out for many years without knowing each other. Paul's auctions on eBay that ended every Sunday,
That's
and
correct.
there'd be like five Americans like bidding on them, either you, myself, Bill, Noel,
Right.
maybe some other random
Yep.
person from there. So it's super fun. And then we would kind of trade duplicates as time went on, and it's been super fun. So we had the first question actually is probably more suited to you since you are an expert in this subcategory. It was from Nils, and he said, "Hey, if you actually let me read the full questions because this is kind of an abridged version." But it says, friend specific question. If you could pick one card pre 1960, which would you pick to bring the most money at auction in today's market? And what price could you see it selling for?
And thanks for the question. I think this question brings up a lot of different topics of discussion, and I'll tell you why. When you say pre 1960, so that's after World War II, and it includes some people, for instance, Just Fontaine and Raymond Coppa, who probably have a lot more name recognition than anybody that I would be interested in the pre-war era. The pre-war era is really where I like to collect, so my heart would certainly go to that side of the equation. But I think with what we see at this time in the market, name recognition is really what drives market value, and probably why one of the reasons, at least, why modern cards seem to do so much better than the 70s and the 80s, and then the generation before that, and then the vintage side. I don't. It's not that they're not as rare. They're much rarer, but I don't think that the learning curve is caught up yet on the historical side of soccer. So when you ask the question, which one would do better at auction today? I mean, so there's a few that come to mind right away. Raymond Coppa's got a couple cards. He's got a Cantaloupe card from the early 50s. I think that would do well. He's also got the Bajolte card from the the Dutch set.
Yep.
Not a lot of eye appeal there, and it also usually doesn't hold up well. I don't think I've ever seen one grade higher than a 1.
Yeah.
And then there's the Chewing Gum Olympiad card, which is the date is a little funky with PSA and the grading companies. Most of us seem to think it's about 55 to 57, but they seem to have settled in on a date of about 58 to 62. So I think any one of those 3 Copas would do the best of the Copas. I think he would probably outprice anything that Just Fontaine has. But going to the pre-war side, Raul Dejanay for me is the pre-war player.
Yeah.
I think the best card that he has is the Fabergé.
Yep.
I believe there's only about 1 or 2 graded copies in existence. There's also a Ben Barrack from 1938, which I gave some thought to.
Yeah, super, super rare. In fact, yours is the only one that I've seen from France, from what I can recall. And that's is it 38 or 39, or do you have it dated?
It's actually 38. He's in a white uniform, and it's the only year that Marseille wore a white kit.
Okay.
So that's but the problem with cards like that is they don't trade, right? And I think you've covered this many times on your show. And part of getting a significant value at an auction result, it has to be a card that at least gets seen somewhat infrequently, maybe once, twice a year. But it has to come to market. It has to trade. Otherwise, there's a big question mark over it, and nobody knows where to price it. We see that, with some of the stuff in the Golden Elite auction right now.
Yeah.
Those are my
yeah. So I think I would be right along with you. I think there is a different Copa Olympiad card from that. I think, if I'm not wrong, SGC graded as a 52, but again, I don't think we know the date. It could be 54, 55, 51. That's a headshot, which I think is slightly, at least to my eyes, slightly more attractive than the in-action ones, although those are in color, which are really fun. And then would you take you were going to take the chocolate Raul, or were you going to take the like El Pie Quicante, one of those? I wasn't sure which one you said.
I think
Fabergé, is that what it's called?
Fabergé.
Yeah, Fabergé.
I believe you and I discussed this once before. We thought the date might have been 34 or 35. Not really sure which one.
Right.
But it's got to be one of his first cards. It's the one where he's in
the oval.
That's right. And the collar sticking up. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So for whatever reason right now, my I can't connect to the drive that I store all these scans on, because I was going to bring some of those up. I mean, you just went through exactly what my choices would have been. So what do you think? Like, I do think that card could do well at auction. I mean, you've got the first integrating French player, right? That helps. We saw what happened with Wharton. I don't think it's as big of a deal for whatever reason, or people don't put as much value in that are certainly Europeans. But like, what do you think a card like that could do, or like a Copa? I think that even bad shape Copa, biscuit card, the Dutch biscuit card, sold for like 1,200 or 1,000 or something. So what do you think some of these other cards would pull? I mean, it's always depends if 2 bidders really, really want it, right? And since these things don't trade, you don't know, right?
That's the big question. I know that there's been somebody in our Discord group who's had some rare South American dollars, and he's been selling them privately. And the prices on those for the better players have been anywhere from $2,000 to $4,000. And I know they've been selling privately in that area, not including the Freed, which seems to go much higher.
Yeah.
But I think he would do at least that. But I do think that, long term, now if we're talking long term, which one, if we were having an auction 10 years from now, I think the result will be much different. And it's all about just, the soccer card market is still coming around. We're just learning about the cards. People still need to catch up on the history of the players, and that's just going to take time.
Yeah. So if you have all those cards discussed, what's the one, and let's just say that it costs, because I'm with you. I think those cards are probably in the 2, if it doesn't have great eye appeal, to 4, depending on who's bidding. at auction, which one would you pick? If you could just pick one
Yeah.
out of all the cards you discussed, which one?
So since in full disclosure, since I own them all, the way I would look at it is what would be the last one I would get rid of?
Right.
And it would be the Dijonais.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the Dijon and the so you'd keep that over the Barrack. See, I actually thought you might have kept that one because I've never seen it, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a good one. And for those of you in the premium Discord, when my thing reconnects, I'll dump some of these scans in the premium section so you guys can see what cards we're talking about. Sorry, I probably would have brought them on the screen here. That's what I was trying to do. But the connection to my share drive, which literally has never happened before right now, is happening. So I probably need to restart my computer, and now's not a good time since we're in the middle of a show. So all right, well, I think that was really good. Here we've got Seb on board, and he says gentlemen. So I think that's a stretch. I don't know how gentle we are, but
we'll take it. You could have called us worse.
Yeah, we've been called worse. And then you've got Ed Strauss. Yeah, it's on the landing screen, Ed. Well, we've got a Discord, and actually the premium Discord. A little bit of a commercial, although we don't normally do this. We have the Discord, which has about 1,000 people, and then we have a premium section where we have kind of tighter group. We have a maximum of 40 people in that group, and we kind of promote it as you can ask us individual questions, get auction advice. We tend to help people with their collection, and it's just a little bit different vibe. It's like belonging to a big university and then belonging to a smaller fraternity or something, and so you can join the Discord, which is absolutely free. Check it out on the actual, I think it's the thumbnail for this show, so please join that if you're not, Ed. It's a really good place, and you can learn a lot, and absolutely free. And then there's a premium section within there that has some nominal charge. I'll have to check with Bill what that is. I don't really know. Anyway, he manages that for us. And hey, Sports Cards Harry, glad you could make it. Hope you're doing well as well. Sure things. I think you're in the UK, right? So I think you guys must be pretty happy, at least with the English not losing, because they did not look great. And here is Seb putting it on the screen for you, but it's on the landing screen as well, Ed, if you got it. All right, so let's move on to the next question. Otherwise, we'll be here all night. And I know a lot of people want to catch the Messi kickoff, which I think is at 8, right? That's at the time?
I'll pass.
You'll pass. Okay. All right. Next one is from Pip in the Discord, and he basically says, "Let me again read the full thing here." I try to condense the questions. But basically, the way I read this is, why are postcards not more loved versus other non-card items? But the way that he puts it is, why do you think postcards are not held more highly, given a large percent of them are one of ones and have the name card in their title, like postcard, versus items that are cut out of record albums? We know he's talking about the Gazetta there, newspapers, magazines, and stickers, none of which are cards either. So why do postcards not get the love? What is your thought?
My thought is, again, goes to the idea that they don't trade as often. I believe there's only one grading company that's even slabbing them, and that's SGC. I don't know. Does PSA slab postcards?
I think they do, but you rarely see them. Here's some SGC postcards. This is the Wrench postcards.
Yep.
I love these postcards. Such cool imagery on these. Oh, this is a Wrench too. I don't know. No, this isn't Needham. But yeah, I mean, you think it's just because they don't trade often and you don't see a lot of slabs out there?
I don't think that's just it. I think a couple things. One, to postcards, I collect them, and it's appealing to me because, again, it goes to the history side of it. So a lot of players that I can't get on a regular card, I try and pick up on postcard issues. So that means you're in the the very early vintage years. Not a lot of collectors in that space yet. Not a lot of collectors with that knowledge yet. Plus, the slabs are oversized, and there seems to be a hesitancy amongst collectors to put oversized slabs in their collection for some reason. I mean, they don't bother me, but I'm not the market. And I have seen some significant sales of postcards. I mean, I've seen several over $1,000. The 1924 Olympic team postcards from France seem to do very well at auction. I think Andre's first card is one of the two players from that set, and it very rarely ever comes around. And I know there's one on eBay right now for about $9,000. So I don't think the seller is going to get that, but I'm sure he could probably get a couple $1,000s if he dropped his price. So what are your
Yeah,
thoughts?
I mean, I think that in and my collecting experience is kind of founded off of my Negro League experience, and there's a lot of players that don't make appearances on cards because literally no cards were issued of Negro Leaguers in the US. So the only time they showed up was sometimes on postcards, and those postcards are typically team shots, and they're typically real photo postcards. But in the Negro League collecting, which again in baseball is totally different, those postcards can routinely sell for 10, 20, north of even $50,000, because they may be some of the few images available, and they're very well respected. Why are they not in soccer? Well, I think that you hit two of my points. The slabs are bigger, so people don't like them. So people want a standard size slab, even if it's cut out from the album a la the Gazzetta, which I still don't completely understand why the market likes that, but they do. And I just think so they don't trade. We always talk about having to see things trade for people willing to pay, right? So I think that's absolutely it. You don't see them in PSA holders, like all of the ones that I have here are SGC holders, like you mentioned. Personally, I give a little bit. I mean, I collect them just like you do. When I just recently bought another Bloomer on PWCC, but that went for like $1,200. So it's not it's not that they're not appreciated. It's just that the market isn't as deep in terms of collectors.
Right.
Personally, I think it should be, and especially for players that you can't get on cards. So the flip side of this is, why do people not like magazines, things cut out of newspapers? I think the market also punishes those things on a relative basis as well. I don't think you ever seen things cut out of a newspaper getting a premium. I just saw a Beckenbauer rookie that's meant to be cut out of a magazine, just sold in PSA 5 or SGC 5, I think it was, on PWCC for like $70. So that's hardly a premium, item in terms of pricing. And then I do think there's a difference on stickers, because stickers are kind of the lifeblood and the historic, I don't know, legacy of kind of collecting globally. And so I kind of hold stickers on par with cards myself, just because I learned early on in my collecting, if I'm going to be in soccer collecting, I'm going to need to be okay with stickers. And I convinced myself that a sticker is a card, really, for me. And so I think that's a transition that happened to me early in my collecting mentality. Did something like that happen to you, or do you see stickers different from cards?
So exactly, when I first came into the space, stickers had no appeal to me, right? As being an old baseball guy like yourself, it had to be cardboard. I mean, when we got stickers and packs growing up, you throw them out. You didn't even save them.
Yeah. Or you stuck them on, there were, at least I did. I stuck them my base, because remember in the 80s, there were some baseball sticker albums. I mean, I peeled them and I stuck them just like the soccer stuff.
But you didn't treat them with any great respect.
Oh, no. I trashed the album 2 years after I was done doing it, right?
I think with postcards, though, that where it's different, there's going to be players that you can only get, like you said, on the Negro Leagues. You can only get them in a postcard. there's no option B. And when we were collecting as kids, right? I mean, you would go to a card show, and there was no name recognition really for baseball players that played in the Negro leagues, other than Satchel Paige and Jackie Robinson.
Yeah, maybe Josh Gibson, but yeah, still.
Okay, but fast forward to today, where we are with that, and it's a much different environment.
Yeah,
and I imagine that the prices and the appreciation of all of those things has gone up, dramatically. I see that as the same path for postcards and soccer and football card collecting.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely an underappreciated segment and of the hobby, and one that I personally love. Especially, I especially am drawn to like real photo postcards. Like here's a Bloomer one. I mean, it's a nice pose, but it's just a real photograph. And for those of you who don't know, these were actually like things taken with cameras, like a real camera, and then it would just print on a postcard stock. So they would normally do, and it would be very small runs. Typically, it could be like they would do 5 shots of the same shot, and so there'd be 5 copies of that particular guy on this camera. Printing them out, he would have them right there. So I find them, and the photography quality in many of these cases are absolutely amazing. Which is
the subject matter.
What's that?
Yeah, I didn't mean to interrupt you. I mean the subject matter. You picked up a Bloomer, and in World War I, they had soccer leagues in the prison POW camps, and Germany, and I think Belgium did as well. They produced postcards of games that were played at that time in those stadiums at the camps. And there's a Bloomer postcard that's out there of him in an action shot in a game, actually in his testimonial match at the POW camp, like a week before they released him.
Oh my God, I didn't know that. Yeah, that's awesome.
But they're great historical pieces. I mean, and if you flip them around, you can really have some fun. There's the stamps on the backside. I mean, they tell a whole story.
Here's an interesting one here. It's a Needham. Great photograph. Will look familiar because the photo's used on a lot of cards. But on the back, it basically somebody wrote in period things, all the things he did in the 1800s, all the way through. It starts in 1894 and it's going through 2002 when this was printed. And it's just beautiful handwriting, and he says English League versus Scotland League, 1893, 1894. Of course, it's going to get a 1 because of all the writing on the back, but the grade doesn't matter to me so much in postcards. It's the quality of the photography and just, the lore of like this one on the back. So, I honestly think it's a great segment, underappreciated. Somebody told me the other day who lives in Manhattan, they're like I can't collect, we were talking about LPs, albums, because when they're graded, just how much space they take. Oh, and I'm like, so I'm like, yeah, I get it. You've got a small closet, as soon as you have a collection of 30 albums, you're taking up real square footage in your house, right?
Well,
so
you got to tell them to move out of Manhattan. What's he doing in Manhattan? With anything valuable in Manhattan these days?
So I said, move to South Carolina, man. Yeah, that's exactly what I said. We got tons of space out here. So anyway, long story short, I think they're great items. I think we've provided some reasons why we think they could be undervalued. Let me see. I think the things popping over here, the chat. Hey, yeah, I know that Bloomer. I don't know if you saw that Bloomer in PWCC, Scott. It was
I think I bid on it. Yep.
Yeah, with the little caps all around it.
Yep.
Yeah, it's very, very fun. Hey, greetings from Australia, Albie. Nice that you could make it. So I'm not exactly sure what Seb was referring to here, the Olympic ones. I think that was based
talking about the Olympiads.
Yeah, let's see. Ed says something. He's biased. He loves them a high grade. They're not highly valued. Yeah. Yep. And I think that, that's what we're saying. I think there's potentially an opportunity there, a market opportunity for the long run. No investment advice, by the way, provided anyone, just hypotheses when we look at interest levels. And hey, Nils, glad you can make it. We answered your French question number 1. So if you weren't here, rewind and check that out. Sports Card Harry coming in saying stickers are 100% equal to cards, and that has to be the way that it is in soccer. If you constrain yourself to just cards, you're not going to have much of a soccer collection. You're going to very, very limit yourself. Hey, Collector's Dream, glad that you could make it. And here, leave Manhattan alone.
I love Manhattan. I just, and the fact that you don't have much closet space.
Yeah, and you know, I mean, look at when you're talking like collecting Bane shields, they don't take up a lot of space. Right. So you got that, Ed. So yeah, PSA does have, at least I have some postcards in PSA slabs. I just couldn't find one right now, and for whatever reason, you don't find them that often. So anyway, on to the next question. Let's see. Okay, so this is a really, really long one, but I kind of tried to narrow down Pip's question to will uncut versions ever get their love versus the cutout version? And this is really long, so you're gonna have to and I know you're not a modern guy, but there's a lot of discussion in the Discord about the Ronaldo 1994 El Mundo Deportivo rookie being cut because it's on a sticker sheet. Are you familiar with this card?
I've seen it, but I'm not intimately familiar with it. It's not part of my collection.
So it came in a magazine, newspaper actually, and it was kind of like an insert.
Okay.
And each week you would get a different insert, and it included what I think eight cards or something. Maybe it was 7 because I'm trying to shoot. I wish I had one that was I had one around here that was a partial sheet, didn't have Ronaldo. But anyway, it was like the whole sheet was a sticker, and then there were cards or stickers, individual stickers that were each individual numbers that would go into an album, and then they were scored like pre-cut so that you could peel them off the sheet and put them in the album, right? Yep. And so those stickers used to be really rare. Like that was my Grail R9 rookie for a long time, and they were you'd find them in like 3s or 4s because you had to awkwardly cut through. It was one sticker sheet just pre-scored, so you had to get it just right to cut out and sacrifice all the stickers around it to get the R9 rookie, right? And so lately there's been a tremendous amount of these hitting the market, and so there's some question, hey, does somebody find a stack of these? How are they questioned? But his question is a little bit bigger. So let me read it. Looking at items being cut for grading like the Ronaldo El Mundo Deportivo and other items that are cut in the last 10 years, do you think at some point down the line that the uncut versions will surpass the items altered or cut out in the last decade, since they should become more rare? PSA doesn't like you to use water to clean cards, a known preservation method for pretty much all ephemera by museums, but will allow someone to take a 50-year-old item, cut it out last week, and get a 9. Will this backfire eventually? What's the difference in cutting? I think it was meant to be in cutting a 90-year-old sheet up last week versus trimming a badly cut one, a 90-year-old sheet, then trim it a bit. Is it a one cut rule? Example, if an uncut sheet of 52 tops was discovered, would it be accepted if a mantle was cut from it and graded a 10? So there's a lot kind of to unpack in there, but fundamentally, the first part of the question is, will uncut sheets ever get their love versus the cutout versions, because they should become more rare in time?
Yeah, I think it's again, this is another theme that we're just going to go back to, I guess. It's going to go back to the size. The bigger the sheet, for whatever reason, the more unappealing it seems to be to collectors today. Will that hold true for the future? I don't know. And there's certainly people that do collect larger items. Yourself, we have large slabbed items in our collection. It doesn't bother us. So it's going to be, with the Ronaldo, and it's not anything that I collect, but my guess would be if the smaller cut item is more preferred, there's going to be more of them that hit the market and supply is going to increase. But at some point, that's going to reduce the amount of uncut sheets. And so people are going to start to look at that and realize that that's a much rarer item. And I would imagine as time goes on, the price will start to, come closer together. I don't know if one's going to be greater than the other, but it's going to be a supply and demand curve, and it's going to be based on the populations between the two, I would think.
And the big problem that most of these sheets have, whether I think it's the Nanina, let's just take the Puskas or some of these Nanina sheets, or in the case of the R9, it's an 8.5 by 11 sheet sticker, right? So that's not getting slabbed, and if it is, it's in a massive slab, right? So it's like 9 by 13 in the best case scenario. So I think that it's right. I mean, size matters, and this is where smaller is better, right? So this is smaller is better. I finally win one, but I mean, honestly, like I was looking at this the other day, which I just got back, some of these, and this one's slightly too big to go on a standard holder, and there's no question that it hurts the value.
But I would rather have it in that holder. I would rather have it in a holder where it looks centered and it's bigger than where it looks like it's jammed into a small holder.
Yeah. So here's, and this is a bad example, but here I think most people are going to pick this one because it fits in their boxes. It goes along with other things that they have. It's easier to store than in this one, even though if you just look at the item, just wow, look at that headshot. It's nicer to look at the actual item, I think, than this smaller version. But this, I think, will always do better. At least it always has. And I believe that the fundamentals behind the standard holder are so ingrained in today's collectors that I don't see that changing. Could it change? Sure. Are there exceptions? Sure. I'll collect things of any size. Like I personally love the Cruyff Vita Trilco, deckled postcard. It's just such an awesome image. But because it's an oversized postcard at that, most people don't like it, right? Even though
it's just one more hurdle to get over in the soccer market. I was very reluctant to think that American card collectors would ever take the stickers, right? But they seem to have become to be accepting of that. Could they one day change their thinking about oversized slabs? If it's the only way you can get an item, I don't see it's impossible. I don't think it's going to happen tomorrow, but I could see it evolving.
Yeah, I mean, I think, there's always going to be people that collect this stuff, the bigger stuff, the smaller stuff. But I just think like the mass part of the market, the bell curve center, right? The 2+ standard deviations of people in the middle, most people are going to tend for, it doesn't mean they'll never venture in ultra small or ultra, like larger size things. But I think that they'll be very, very selective in the deviations. For very particular reasons, depending on their collection style. So we got a collector's dream ad. He goes, he agrees that that many collectors just want standard stuff, and I do think that's the status quo of the hobby. It's impossible to pretend to know what's going to happen in the future. I hope that some of these items get love. But having a lot of them myself, I do sometimes wonder, I'm like, okay, I have this. I have no place left to display these larger, really nice items. And so I can envision, and I have quite a bit of space. So most of them end up just, in a drawer. But frankly, most of my cards are in a drawer too. So I don't know why it bothers me, right? But it's, I could see, I wish that some of these really kind of fun oversized items got more love in the hobby. And maybe over time they will, but for now, I think that's really, part of it. But so, back to his question, I don't think the uncut sheets will ever kind of surpass a nicely cut version of what you want. And I could be wrong on that, despite the demand profile, despite, hey, if there are fewer of these in the future, of uncut sheets, I just don't see it being enough to people to get over the hurdle. But if you're unsure, then look at once you cut it, it's a one-way street. So don't cut it, right? If you're unsure, just don't cut it. That's my general advice to people. And being someone who is I'm even nervous about soaking an album because it's just not my expertise, and I tend to focus on things that are my expertise. So I like all that stuff is nerve-wracking to me, and I don't have that skill that apparently others have masters or have balls of steel to take a sheet that's worth thousands of dollars, and I don't know what type of machinery they use, but it's certainly not scissors, because if it was mine, it would be like this. They're doing something. So anyway, Ed chimes in though and says that he'll buy anything cool any size, which
and that's a guy with a limited closet space in Manhattan.
Yeah, there you go. And he says, I live in New York City. There you go. You're right. So let's and then to kind of finalize this, I felt like there's a little bit of disgust in his tone of like, hey, you can cut this old item today and get it graded and can get a 9. Do you think that's fair? And the last thing he mentioned is, hey, do you think the market would accept a 52 tops item that was graded a 10 today out of an uncut sheet?
If they didn't know.
Yeah, so I think SGC actually used to provide a service, I don't know if they do now, where they would cut a sheet for you, and then they would subsequently grade the cards. I think they discontinued that. So there was that was available at some time as a service. I do think that the big difference is that most of the items that we've referenced in this call, whether it was the, those Nanina cards or many soccer items outside of the Gazzetta, were generally intended to be cut. So the Pele record. So they were intended to be cut out of their thing. And I think that intent is very important. Now, is a 52 sheet meant to be cut? Yes, but it's meant to be cut at the factory,
right?
Not hand cut. And I think the differentiation of hand cut, I don't really think it matters if it was hand cut yesterday or hand cut 50 years ago. If it was meant to be hand cut and it survived and you had it and you decided to cut it today, I don't really have a problem with it. Again, this is not my area of expertise. I don't know how to cut things. It would just be, I'd be sweating, just I'm almost sweating thinking about the stress of trying to do something like this well, if you're not an expert, but I'm sure there are people that know it. It doesn't create heartburn for me, but I don't think a mantle cut from a sheet would be accepted today if they had any inkling that it was actually cut from a sheet. But again, if you did it absolutely perfectly and there was no way to detect it, maybe it would be. And that's kind of scary to me. I don't know. What do you think?
I think we depend too much on the grading companies and we give them more credit than they deserve. And I mean, any has an interest in them. I just know from my own experience, things that I've seen. I've seen things get submitted on more than one occasion to the same grading company over a period of different years and come back with remarkably different grades. I've seen things, go from one grading company to another company, and not get as good a grade if you put it in the holder when you transferred it over. But, 6 months later, you break it out of the holder and send it back in, and you get a better grade. I mean, there's no great science to it yet. So I do think that we rely on them too much. And I think that some of the premiums that are appreciated are a little bit inflated. I don't think that the collector base really respects them all that much, though, because, when we watch a show and we go over auctions, or you've discussed auctions that have happened at PWCC or Golden, one of the things they say, well, it's a PSA 5, but is it a real 5? Is it a good 5? Is it a clean 5? And, at the end of the day, I think that we do give them it's our own fault. We rely on them too much.
Yeah, I mean, I certainly I think everybody's kind of made a mistake to not check the card, and certainly if I'm ever bidding, decent money, um I am definitely checking their work, so to speak, because there's differences, right? And it's not just like not all ones are the same. Like ones are like go from like trash to actually decently presented ones, right? So
Right.
I think what we need to worry about is things that are more that like it's graded a 5, but it looks like there's paper loss, so it should be a 2, right? And unfortunately, I do think we need to check all the grading companies on that, carefully, and inspect the ultra high res screens. I actually wish we could blindly trust everything, but I find myself looking at pretty much any card of material value to see how I feel about the grade,
And
right?
I think part of the problem too is with early on when people in America first started submitting cards to PSA and a little bit of it to SGC, they just didn't take it seriously. And there's a lot of cards out there from like the 1970s forward where they just have ridiculously high grades. And I don't think that the graders at that time were really paying much attention to it at all. Now, for people that live through the population reports, that should change things dramatically because, but you can't quantify it. And when you look at a pop report and it says that there's 150 Roberto Baggio Panini rookies printed or graded, it doesn't give you any idea of when they were graded. You get the grand total of the numbers, but from what I saw, if you sent in a Roberto Baggio rookie and at the very beginning of the boom, you were going to get a much higher grade on that card than if you submitted it today.
Yeah, so you can use GemRate. I'm not sure if you've used that to kind of track. It doesn't go back as far as you may like, but it's very interesting because that tracks kind of the and then Card Ladder does it to a similar extent. It's not super helpful for what you do, so you probably don't use these tools.
Right.
But effectively, it shows like the gem rate over time, and it shows like submissions and when the pops actually go, and you can search by PSA, SGC, BGS. So I think I think in general, I don't expect any company to be perfect, right? I know my own companies, we make mistakes, so I don't expect that. But I certainly I think that as we go through kind of this collecting evolution, paying attention to the card is an important part of what we should be doing going forward. Like I don't bid on all PSA 5s the same. And it's something that we've mentioned in all of our auction reviews. Hey, this doesn't feel bad for a SGC3 or that has these issues. It's really still by the card, not the holder, but we can't be absolutely what's the word, oblivious to the holder, because the holder does actually provide value in the market, right? So
absolutely,
you got to do both now anyway. So all right, let's jump on to the next question. Let's see. Oh, we got the champ in the house. The champ's got his champagne, and so here we go.
Shouldn't he be whipping up some food? I mean, what is he doing?
Yeah, he should be. Yeah, he's got some empanadas there. Yeah. He's getting ready for
gonna have some disappointed customers if he's here.
Yeah, actually, yeah, that's true. He's got a big staff, He's probably getting ready for the Argentina game here in a bit. All right, so
true.
So Pelkey asks about new finds. Was it last weekend or I guess it was the weekend before. Actually, the champ, he had Leo from Panini Vibes on, and this is what Pelkey says. He goes, the Instagram live discussion, which was Champ's discussion, it with Panini Vibes was one of the most important pieces of hobby content I've seen in some time. I don't view all of it positively, but I don't really know what he doesn't see positively, but important nonetheless. And credit to Panini Vibes for putting it all out there for folks to assess as they see fit. Adel Ray Collection already provided some perspective on that live, but would be good to have a debrief on the next premium show. Okay, so basically the what happened here is a Discord member, Panini Vibes, Leo. He took offense to a video that USMNT put out on YouTube that called kind of into question from his perspective that he was potentially faking stickers. USMNT didn't really say that, but did really kind of imply that pointed out that the population on a pretty rare Iniesta sticker that used to be rare in gem mint condition went from a pop of 5 to like 25. And he basically submitted, let's call it 15 or 20, and they all got PSA 10s. And that raised his eyebrows. He goes, look, out of all collecting 20 years, there's 5 gem mints. Now there's 20. And, he's concerned, right?
So Panini Vibes is a seller. I'm just trying to catch up.
Yeah. Panini Vibes is a seller / collector.
Okay.
And then there was some comment on the pricing and what happened in auctions and yada yada yada. So long story short, he felt somewhat offended on how USMNT categorized the fine, and he took it as he was alluding to fakes. I didn't get the same vibe out of that, but maybe Champ, who's here, who was actually on the live for many hours. I popped in just to provide a perspective, because it got me thinking that a lot of these, as we were just talking about pops earlier, a lot of these pops, are not sacred and are vulnerable, right, to these type of supply shocks, especially when you talk about pre-modern stickers. And that was a prime example. And to me, it made me, one of the points that I made to Panini Vibes was, man, I have a Zidane PSA 9, which right now is the highest sticker. I'm going to lie if I did the highest graded Zidane rookie sticker. And I'm like, I'm not going to lie. That makes me feel like vulnerable. If somebody can find, 15 of these, and I'm not saying that, and nobody was saying that, at least to my perspective, that these were fakes or anything. He just found them. He got lucky. He found some great ones that were in great condition. He culled through them. He did the grind. He does all the stuff we want to do. And he submitted a large order, and it dramatically shifted, the pop in a positive way for him, a negative way for the previous holders. And I think it just makes that whole segment a bit of a minefield, which is another word that USMNT used, in terms of, wow, what if people find large collections? And there must be a lot of large collections that are not in PSA slabs sitting throughout Europe, regardless if they're in an unopened state or, in people's just collections. So it was I found it to be an interesting card. I'm not exactly sure what Pelkey, wants to do in terms of getting into more, detail about this. But for me, it was kind of, I don't want to say an epiphany, because you always know there's risks here, but it sensitized me to an increased risk of high grade pop explosion. And that probably goes throughout the entire soccer space, but I think you're most exposed in the mass production sticker era, which probably in my mind goes from 1990 to present day. So
now,
any thoughts on that?
Yeah, and this is not a product that I'm familiar with at all, but this story to me sounds very reminiscent of the 1989 Upper Deck baseball product. And there were cases I remember that, it could be in this particular instance, he just came across somebody who had cracked a big case, and that case might have had a bunch of cards that were all, just happened to be cut perfectly.
Yeah.
That happens in our world, and at least in the modern world. And I remember that, this does not surprise me that, all of a sudden 20, which isn't a big number when you're talking about modern card production. I mean, they probably printed, tens, hundreds of thousands of those cards. I don't know.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not a one of one, is it? It's not
No,
a
no, no, no. It's just a
Yeah,
standard
so I
sticker
mean,
from an album.
somebody
So
might have just hit a hot case, and that hot case might have ended up in one particular area, and this guy happened to find a bunch of them.
yeah, no, no. I mean, I think that that's in general kind of the vibe, but I think the end result of that
Yep.
is that it's kind of a little bit of an eyebrow raiser to say, wow, it's a hard space to invest in if
Very
that
hard.
can happen, right? If
Yeah.
if
Terrible.
you're gonna spend because those gem mints, those PSA 10s had sold for $3,000-$4,000 when there was five,
Yep.
because he's a marquee player, right? Great rookie sticker. And now all of a sudden there's 25. What does that do to price? The last one sold for 1,500.
Yeah.
And you got to imagine that the next one's going to sell for less than that, right? So there's some question to me about that entire pre-modern space of how kind of investable it is.
Right.
If the market can take a shock from one guy, and he's actually been a grinder in Europe, going around finding all sorts of really kind of fun stickers. He also found some EA Sports stickers, but you won't be familiar with that per se. So I don't know, Pelkey, if you happen to be on, if you had any additional things you wanted to talk about as far as that goes. But I thought Champ did a great job of letting Leo kind of lay it out there, present his case to kind of the hobby. And I think that, whether you want to believe him or not, that's your own personal decision. I mean, people can decide to believe what they want. They can decide to buy what they want or not buy what they, don't want, right? That's part of just our rights.
What is the thought about what he did wrong? What is the
No,
underlying allegation?
I think it was more that he felt like he was being accused of something by USMNT about saying like maybe he was printing them. He never said any of that, so I think it was kind of a miss. And we're dealing with different cultures and stuff, and I think, and he never even mentioned his name. He just was talking generically about a find and how that affects it, and how he would stay away from those types of if that happened, it's not a great time to invest in that. And by the way, I said, as I said on Champs Live, I have bought stickers from him. His stickers line up with the other stickers that I had of things that I had bought from him. So I think there's little doubt that he is, like printing stickers from his house, right? I don't think anybody's making that accusation. He's been very active in the hobby. He's, getting out there and telling people, his story, how he goes about these finds. So PSA graded them. So you also have the guarantee with PSA, and they've checked the sizes. So, I don't really think there's anyone saying that, but he did kind of take it like that, even though that wasn't explicitly said. Here's Champ, because he is here's Champ. Let's see what he says. I'm excited. Pre-modern in great conditions. Yeah, sign him up. I can see why investors, flippers are terrified in regard. Yeah, I mean, it's not that they're bad values. It's just that, if you pay that super high premium for the highest grade sticker at a low pop, and then the pop quadruples, it's like if you buy Michael Jordan PSA 10 rookies right now, there's 300 of them, and you're going to pay $200,000. Tomorrow you wake up and there's 1,200 of them. They're not going to be at that same price, right? It's just, that supply shifts, and by natural consequence in the supply demand curve, the price is going to go down. That's just the way that it works, right?
That's why everybody should buy vintage. We play in grades of A to 4,
exactly,
and populations of about 50 and under.
And that was exactly, my point is like, I feel more comfortable putting incremental hobby dollars now, I think, into things that I perceive as safer that don't have condition rarity attached to them, you
Right.
know. But at the same time, I do love, if you get PSA 9 or 10 and a sticker, I feel pretty good about it because those are tough, right?
Feel
One more
good,
thing.
sell it, buy something better.
Yeah, so here's a champ. Isn't what I said. The pop reports are going up slowly. Filling out. It's happening. Yeah, I mean, look at pop reports only have one way to go, and that's up. And I think that I had said I actually just published a video last week about kind of my predictions for 2024, and one of them was that the pre-modern sticker was going to generally, obviously there was a big rush to grade things during the boom in COVID, and thereafter it would stabilize, and it did stabilize for a number of key stickers from my perspective, like the Zidane's, the Iniesta headshot, the Lewa headshot, the KDB headshot. There's a few other examples, but I just thought that those were gonna stabilize, and some have, but I think we're realizing that all of those are potentially, subject to a supply shock. And I'm not talking about like a Black Swamp Fine supply shock, like the 1 in 100-year type shock. I'm talking more like a consistent, set by set, shock that happens more broadly throughout collecting.
Right.
So anyway, yeah, and there's only one way, unless fakes are found, that pops are going, and that's up and to the right. So that's kind of that. I don't know. So Pelkey must not be on because I didn't see a follow up there. So kind of the last question that we had here was, we normally talk about state of the market, but since I think you got at least one of these cards on here, and I know I did. He wanted kind of a review of some pretty big cards with thin comps going, and just kind of wanted to know, I guess he said, I'd normally wait for the state of the market, but this week's PWCC auction had some noteworthy sales. So I'd be interested in your reaction. Seemed like a higher percentage of pretty big cards with thin comps. The Planikov, 42 Leonidas, the Freed, Nasasi, which is the Eduardo P. or Pi postcard. A couple of dollars. I think there was a Stabile on there. The Saeda Zico, Eusebio rookies. There were others. So what are your kind of thoughts? I guess we can take these 4 or 5 by themselves if you happen to remember those, and or just talk about other just general thoughts.
Well, the Planica one, the first one, I remember that well because that's the one I won. It's a card that I've chased since I've been in a hobby. Greeling was one of the first finds that I had as a collector. Early on, I bought out a collection of a guy in New York, old time collector, and he had about 2,000 Greelings. And it was beautiful. And from that, I was able to just pick off some great cards. The last one that's been elusive to me was the Planica, and you and I have discussed this in the past, that Greeling numbered series that's in the high numbers and also in the high 500s. They're, for whatever reason, they're very short printed. They come up very, very seldomly. That would be the Planica, the Kazora, the Zapan, and Horvath. There's another one. I think Orth is in there too. All really short printed, all hard to get. Planica's only got 2 graded copies anywhere between PSA, SGC, and CGC. So when that one finally, I couldn't believe it showed up on PWCC, and I was going to go hard on it, and it went for a lot less than I thought it was going to go. I was prepared for more.
Yeah, I mean, it would have. I mean, if I didn't have a copy, I would have gone hard. It was actually on this is something, I talk on the channel about having a top 10 list. That card was actually on my top 10 list for like 5 years when I started collecting.
Yep.
And so when I finally found it, which back in the day, it was probably cost me $400, and this is pre-boom dollars, so that was a big price. And so I also was similarly, it felt to me like people don't really know how hard this card is why it went for, what did it end up going for, like 800 or something?
Yeah, with the BP, it was about 800.
Yeah, so it definitely was lower than where I thought that one was going to go. And it was kind of interesting because like the Hoffmans, there were a bunch of Greenlings, really cool Greenlings that went, which is a much easier card, went for like, 350 or 380 or something like that. And I'm like, wow, this, I actually thought even still it kind of slipped through the cracks on a relative basis, but it definitely got some love. Super hard, super hard card.
And this is one of those auctions, I think, and there was one last week too on eBay. This is all one German collector, I came to find out, who's a member of the Discord, and he's selling a big part of his collection. So I could see people think, well, this stuff, oh, the market's getting flooded. Oh, there's a lot of them. This is a one-shot deal. This is a very serious German collector in Germany, who had the ability and the access to get some real gems. I don't think you're going to see another one come to market anytime soon.
While again, I looked for one for like 5 to 6 years, so that to me actually seemed low, but I understand why people were like, "Wow, that's high." It's a German, it's a Greenling. Why is it going so high? And I think that's the answer. I mean, it's high number, super rare SP of an amazingly important player. So that was that. Did you see? I think the Leonidas ended at like 1,300, if I'm not wrong.
I think you're right.
Yeah, on the Americana, that was a SGC Authentic, I think.
But a nice picture. That was a portrait.
Yeah, portrait of his head. And then the Freed, which is post playing clear, went for like 400.
Yeah.
From the 42 Americana set. I actually picked up the Freed. But what are your thoughts on those cards?
There just aren't. I know that Leonidas is in a lot of cards. There's a lot of issues of them, maybe a dozen from Brazil. It could be short, but there's not a lot of any one of them. I don't think we're going to see 25 42 Americanas come to market.
Yeah.
Ever. So picking that card up of that type of a player for $1,400, I mean, I think the seller did well. I think you did too. I mean, the Freed, we're not going to see a lot of Freeds. Yeah, it's post playing career, but there's only about 2 or 3 issues of him during his playing career, and there's only the LT Gray, we know that there's only one, at least one that's come to market, and the Dolars, I think they're pop reports say there's about 10. That's it. So if you want a Freed, you're any one of his cards, your probably market cap is about 25 cards, be it the 22 LT Gray, the Dolar, or the Freed from the 42 set. So paying $400 to lock up one of those cards, I think is a great long-term buy.
Yeah, I just feel like, and I know somebody had called it, maybe it was breakfast cereal, it's an entry-level Freed. And I'm like, yeah, it is an entry-level Freed because post-playing career, but any Freed is a good Freed. Right. in my mind. It's like, you and Brazilian, pre-19, well, I may even go pre-55 Brazilian. I was going to say pre-50, but it's just tough. I would have thought with the boom and a lot of prices, we would have seen a lot more stuff. I know a lot of people are looking, and you just, it just hasn't come out as much. And it makes me think that, well, first of all, the quality is worse than like in Argentina, right? So they're thinner, and so maybe less survive. They probably have more regional issues.
Not that LT Gray. That's a beautiful card.
Yeah. Well, that's like thicker cardboard, right? 1920s Brazil, as opposed to the 30s Depression era.
That's
On
gorgeous.
onto the 40s, right? So I think that yeah, I think that those on a relative basis, I actually feel like those went low. I mean, the
Yeah.
assertion here is that these things went well, they did well. Actually, I think all of this stuff went low. I mean, the Nasasi, Eduardo P, that is, yeah, it's in the oversized holder, but it's a great photo. He's like standing, there. I sold one privately, my duplicate, from almost 2,000.
Yeah.
And this one sold for what, 1,000?
Yeah, just under.
Yeah. And that's, not a super, you'd think you could go on Toto and like find this every day of the week.
No.
Yeah, you can't find it.
No,
Right.
it may be an entry level Freed, but there are not going to be a lot of people getting through that gate.
Yeah. So yeah. So the Nasasi, I think, was there. Yeah, the dollars that went. I think they were a little rough, and they went right around 1,000. Well, I'm including a Bernabe Ferrara, which actually wasn't a dollar. It was a record.
Right.
A record, and then there's a
Agnati though.
Yeah. So also I felt like those weren't great sales. They weren't bad. I thought condition adjusted, those were probably where I expected them to hit. Is that how you felt too?
Yeah, exactly. And I love the dollars, and the Bernabe was it's a great card. That one, I looked at it and it had a really
line
terrible crease across it. Otherwise,
without that line, I would go more than that, but I thought it was condition adjusted, a fair price, right?
Right. Yeah, I mean, decent one. I think again, like we talked before, it's probably $2,000 to $4,000 card.
Yeah. So that was, a good one. And then the Sierra Zico, which I think was actually the 76 Miscellanea. I picked this one up too. I know that one was, I think it went for like 1,100, 1,200, somewhere in there. And it's just it's a similar one to the other 76 Zico issue, but it has a different back. And it's been like on my Zico want list for a long time. I just could never track one down. And given that since I could never track one down and this one was never stuck, I just stretched for it. It sold in the boom for 1,400. So I probably overpaid on current market. But like a lot of stuff, if you've been looking for it for a long time and it comes up, like your Planica,
gotta nail it down. What did it end up selling for?
What's that?
What did it end up selling for?
I think it was 1,200 with the juice.
Okay.
I'll double check. And I think during the boom, the same grade card, I don't know if it was the same one, was like 1,400. So it wasn't a huge discount, but it's a really, really tough sticker.
No, he's got a cult following. So, and the next guy too. Those are two players with a cult following who I personally think that their price is overperformed compared to other similar players of their caliber.
Yeah. So Eusebio did, what was it, 4,500? I think and it was a little rough version. It wasn't as rough as the last authentic that went, but it's definitely down. That was in the high thousands, in similar grade. But here, because most of them are 1 to 1.5, you really got to look at the stickers and say, hey, which one do I want in my collection? They off center, the backs are thrashed, they're stained, they're crumpled, creases on the face, whatever. So you really got to look at those. I thought that was about, I kind of expected maybe a tick or two higher, but I felt like that was market. So out of all of these cards, I didn't feel like anything like blew away what I thought it was going to go. I just think that these are tough to comp, and I generally feel that the tough to comp items, with the exception of the Eusebio, because that one you could comp, do less than what I would expect them to do on a relative rarity, because back to how we started the show, when things don't trade,
right,
people don't have confidence in what they should pay. So they are conservative. And I think it's still generally through the soccer hobby, rare items that don't trade don't trade for the premiums when they finally show up because people don't know what they're dealing with and they don't want to get burned. So they're conservative and some things fall through the cracks on a relative basis, right?
Right.
I mean, any Greeley card for $800 outside of Sindelar is a big sale, right? I get why people think that's a big sale, but on a relative basis, when you adjust for rarity, I don't feel like it's a big sale to my eyes.
I just think it's nice that we're. I hope it continues. We've seen a nice little run of PWCC getting some things that we don't typically see in their auctions. Greelings. These Brazilian cards that have come up the last couple of weeks. I think you picked up a couple Santos rookies, and just some rare stuff coming to market. And it depends who you listen to. Some people think that the market's turning back up, and if unless everything goes terrible, it might continue that way right up and through 2026. So this might be your last best chance to pick up some of this stuff.
Yeah, it certainly feels like the market hasn't moved a tremendous amount in the lower mid-grade, generally available things.
Right.
I think that's been stable to downish a little, but on the more, special items, rarer items, and higher graded items, I think that there's been, some significant appreciation. It's hard to talk about the market because it's, some stocks go up, some stocks go down, and the market goes up. But I do feel like the market is definitely in a better place. Well, I don't want to say definitely, but it feels like there's a much higher probability it's in a better place today than it was 12 months ago.
Right. When I say the market, I'm really only talking about the things that I'm familiar with.
No, and I think that most of the stuff you're familiar with, as a general, I'd say has gone up like double digits plus since last summer. Wouldn't you say that's the case?
I think that's generally the case. But again, we don't need a lot of people to come into that space, that pre-war vintage space. It's so low.
Yeah.
It's different, as you get more current in the market. If you're buying stuff that was printed in 2000, you're going to need a large collector base to support it. You have to keep demand up, otherwise there's just going to be overwhelming supply and prices are going to drop. That's just something that doesn't happen in the pre-war market.
Yep. Now, I mean, we always are at risk for one of these black swan finds things of something you collect, right? So
of course,
but I think that's a risk that's kind of across the hobby in anything, or not even this hobby, all hobbies, right? You may have the right, I don't know, Mickey Mouse doll. I don't know if that's something that people collect from like the 1940s, and then somebody opens a warehouse someday and finds 50 of them when they're emptying a storage unit or something, right? There's always this type of risk in everything. They find new Picassos and new stuff all the time, right? So I think that the important thing is about that market demand, right? If we get consistently more collectors, then that absorbs the increase of supply. And if we have people get out of the hobby, well, then that obviously is gonna hit the other direction, right? It's gonna affect prices negatively if a bunch of people leave the hobby. So I mean, I think supply is only going one direction, certainly in graded cards. And I think that we're generally more protected in the older items from especially smaller countries, but there's no guarantee that'll hold either,
Yeah.
So
and don't you think that's part of why, like, if you're collecting in that space, you have a budget that you're working in, it's important to spread it out across a little bit of a wide swath, so that you're less vulnerable if in fact one of those black swan finds comes your way. It's not going to wipe out the entire value of your collection because you had it all in one basket.
Yeah. Certainly don't do one. I mean, look at collect what you like and how you like, but the odds for disappointment go up if you're all in one player, one geography, one issue. And as you get more and more broad, that risk gets distributed throughout your entire collection. So well, great. Hey, look at this. So this is a great way to kind of end the show. There you go. Getting props from El Toro Cards. So yeah, so good stuff. Let me just double check. I don't think I saw any other questions kind of ping in here, but it was great for you. Appreciate you making the time to come on here and substitute out with Bill, who's at the Electric Forest right now.
Celebrating his birthday, right?
Yep, celebrating his birthday. Music festival. Trying to
have old man still doing it. Look at him.
I know, it's crazy, man. Like I need to be on the couch, watching a show at 10 p.m. But
is there anything about going to an Electric Forest in a tent for 4 days at your age that appeals to you?
Not at all. Not one bit. Not even remotely.
Good for you, Bill. Making the rest of us old guys look good.
I love it, man. I'm like, man, I wish I had the, my friend is an ultra marathoner, and he was like gonna run this race for like 100 miles, and I says, and I just thought to myself, and I said to him, I'm like,
he must really hate his wife.
I said, that is like my worst case scenario. Like, I would probably rather go sit in a jail cell for the weekend than run 100 miles, right? But to each their
ultra marathon or Electric Forest for the weekend. What do you want to do?
I go Electric Forest. I did the ultra marathon, man. That was just like, but both of them are really low on my list. So
yes.
So I would rather sit in the pool, cool down, and watch a baseball game on TV, or right now the Cup of America or Euros. That would be fun.
Sounds like a good idea.
But hey, thanks, Scott, for making the appearance today. Certainly appreciate it. For those of you guys who don't know, Scott will be at the National as well, so we'll kind of link up with him. He's one of the OG soccer collectors, so make sure that and I think you'll be there Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, right?
Right. Yeah, I'll be there for happy hour at your booth at the after show.
There we go. We're planning. It should be really fun to get together with a bunch of collectors. So
now you and Bill are bringing you guys are having a keg at your table. Right?
Kegger at the table.
All right,
no,
all right.
I don't know what the rules are, but if things permit, we will be
Discord members drink free.
Talk to Bill. He runs the accounts.
All right.
But it'll be fun. That we promise. All right, guys. Well, thanks, Scott, again for making the thing over here. And let's see, what's this? What the last comment I think just popped up? Yeah, there you go. So Ed just is a brand new vintage collector, and
throw in the space one person at a time.
One person at a time. So all right, guys. Take care. Hope everyone enjoyed it. Hey, like this video. Come to the Discord, sign up. It's again at the landing page or thumbnail, whatever it is. If you're not in it, you'll learn a lot from a lot of people. Hopefully, have a good time. It's a great group of people, and appreciate everybody's support. Subscribe if you're not subscribed, and have a great evening, everybody. Thanks so much.
See you at the National.